What's up, YouTube? This is one of my favorite weeks of the year. This is the kickoff of college football season. Actually, last weekend was, but I think this is official kickoff. This is week one. And as usual, for the third year in a row, we are doing the picks against the spread here on the Carolina Jackpot channel. I have 39 games that I'm picking spreads against this week. That is almost all the games on the board. It's not quite all the games on the board. There's a few there that I just thought were kind of irrelevant, and just ones I just dismissed for whatever reason. I don't have an example of which ones those are, but this is most of them. I'd say I was going to try to do them all. I'm not going to be able to do them all, but I'm going to try to do most every week. Now, this is going to be split into two parts. This is part one tonight. This is going to be our Thursday night matchups for the 29th and our Friday night matchups for the 30th of August. And then there will be another video, most likely tomorrow night late, for the Saturday matchups. So that's the way we're going to rock and roll with that. And let's just get right into it, guys. Kicking it off, UCLA, the Bruins traveling to take on the Cincinnati Bearcats. Of course, the Bearcats last year kind of came out of nowhere and made a big run there in the AAC East. Went on the road and won their first game at UCLA last year, 26-17, and what at the time was thought to be kind of an upset. But at the end of the year, it really wasn't an upset. UCLA finished up 3-9, but they did make some improvements late in the year when they kind of got used to Chip Kelly's system a little bit. They're really high on their quarterback that's coming back this year. Their run defense last year was number 11 in the Pac-12. I don't know that they've really done a lot to improve that. I don't think that Chip Kelly is the kind of guy who's going to win games with defense. He's going to win games by outscoring you. And I think that lack of a good, solid run defense is going to play a little havoc with them here in this game at Cincinnati. They bring back Michael Warren, who was well over a 1,000-yard rusher last year. I just think UCLA is going to have a hard time stopping this guy. Desmond Ridder, another one that kind of came out of nowhere, did a really good job for him at quarterback last year. Cincinnati, in my opinion, is one of the top three group of five teams in the country, along with UCF and possibly Memphis. They've won 17 straight home games as well. And I know they're not normally used to opening up with foes like this. But I'm a real huge fan of games like this. I mean, UCLA traveling all the way across the country to play Cincinnati, and vice versa, the same thing last year in the opposite. It's just interesting. It's different than, like in any regular year, you'd have Cincinnati opening up at home against Western Kentucky. I mean, who wants to see that? This is interesting. It's a 3-point line here. I think UCLA is going to continue to improve this year. I think they're going to be better and may make a bowl game, probably one of the minor ones. I don't think they're quite here yet to make a big splash in the Pac-12 West. But I look for Cincinnati to win this game. I look for them to cover the spread. And this could be a close game. And probably a much better game, much better fundamentally sound game than last year. But I still like the Bearcats in this one at home. They also don't need to be looking ahead to next week's matchup because they go on the road to take on the Ohio State University. That's going to be a huge game as well. Florida International goes on the road. They play Tulane. It's a 2-point favorite at home. FIU is returning a ton of players off of a team last year that finished up 9-4 with a bowl win. Butch Davis has just done a tremendous job with that team, and quite frankly, maybe the best team on that side of Conference USA. Everybody a couple years ago had fallen in love with Florida Atlantic, and they thought FAU was going to be the team on that side of Conference USA. More and more looking like it's going to be FIU. Going on the road to taking on Tulane in this one out of the AAC West. Kind of made some offensive changes there under Willie Fritz. They're kind of speeding things up a little bit. Of course, they got a good running back returning there. They were a team last year just really streaky. Had a win one week. I think they beat Memphis. Somebody had an upset, and then they turn around and drop one to SMU. I mean, they're just kind of unpredictable there. I definitely think FIU has the coaching advantage here. With Butch Davis, I'm going to take them on the road here to cover the spread in this game. I think FIU takes the win here against Tulane. I like the James Morgan fella, the transfer quarterback from Indiana, doing a nice job for them. Take the FIU and the Golden Panthers to kind of get a little bit of an upset victory here on the road at Tulane. Georgia Tech versus my favorite team, the Clemson Tigers. The Clemson is laying 36 at home to the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Of course, big spread is a result of two things. Clemson's just a really good team. Offensively, there will be no team that can match them this year, I don't think, and outside of maybe one of the Oklahoma or something, production-wise. Just a ton of skilled talent on that team. And you got Georgia Tech instilling a new offense there under Jeff Collins. They ran the triple option for over a decade with Paul Johnson. And most of the players who are there at Georgia Tech right now were recruited to play an option-type offense. So there's going to be some growing pains. They've been used to chop blocks and all that stuff. And he's just instilled a totally different offense there. The thing is, these are intelligent kids. These are intelligent kids who are coaching there. Georgia Tech is a notch above some of your just normal run-of-the-mill universities as far as academics go. The thing is, I think Georgia Tech is going to have a really hard time with pass protection. They're used to throwing the ball 4 times a game. And in this offense, they're going to throw it quite a bit more. I just think they're going to struggle with that. Now, I know Clemson did lose a lot of talent off that defensive line last year. I mean, 3 first-rounders. But the guys that are there this year, Xavier Thomas, Niles Pinckney, you got Logan Rudolph over on the other side. Some of these guys rotated in and played quite a bit last year. So they did lose those starters, yes, and those NFL talents. But the guys that are replacing them, they've gotten a lot of reps in. So I don't think that defensive line is going to fall off that much. I still think Clemson's secondary is a little bit suspect, but I don't think that Georgia Tech's going to be able to move the ball effectively here. You know, I've heard a lot of people saying that they don't think Clemson will cover the spread because Dabo doesn't like to run the score up on basically coaches he doesn't have an issue with, young coaches, what have you. And I can get that narrative. I get that. You don't want to run the score up on somebody because, 3 years from now, I mean, your team might be a crap show, and then he's going to remember that. I don't think it'll be the case with them, but I see this kind of being maybe last year like their game against Louisville, where I don't think they were trying to necessarily run the score up on Louisville, but the dive play went for 70 yards and a touchdown because it couldn't stop anybody. This is kind of the thing that I think may happen here. I think the Tigers are still going to cover that number. I like Clemson and the 36 points here. Give me the Tigers. Texas State, the Bobcats, go on the road to take on Texas A&M. Of course, we all know Jimbo Fisher at A&M last year. Pretty good season. They finished 9-4 last year at Texas A&M, right? With a big bowl win. Texas State was 2-10 last year. But they actually returned one of the most experienced teams in the country. Believe it or not, they have a transfer quarterback who is the starter at FCS Montana. And they could give a few problems to that A&M secondary who's not been the best in the past couple of years. Been known to give up quite a few yards and some long passes. Their pass defense at Texas State, I'm getting off track here a second. Texas State's pass defense last year, not exactly horrible either. They were a bad team, yes, 2-10. Had 4 of those losses, were not that bad. Texas A&M, I think, is going to be looking ahead a little bit to that Clemson game next week. They may pull Kellen Mond in the second half. I think they're going to get a lead. They may pull him. I think they may have a little bit of trouble running the ball, just based off the fact with the loss of Travion Williams. Not really sure how that's going to go. I think Texas A&M still is going to win this game comfortably. However, I'm going to take Texas State to cover the spread here, whether it may be a combination of, Texas A&M playing a little bit conservative and Texas State being an improved team this year and being able to defend the pass a little bit. South Dakota State at Minnesota. Yes, we have this one on here. South Dakota State, the Jackrabbits, 12.5-point underdogs on the road at Minnesota. Now, some of these lines, by the way, may have moved. These are lines as of Sunday evening on CBS Sports app, cbssports.com. You can get, different lines and different so forth everywhere, but this is the one I choose to go with. This is one I do a lot of my research with, too. Minnesota needs to be careful here. This team was 10-3 last year. They lost to North Dakota State, I think in the FCS semifinals. North Dakota State, of course, ended up winning the whole thing over there in FCS. They returned 1,000-yard or 1,100-yard, actually, rusher. There's a lot of expectations from Minnesota this year and the third year of P.J. Fleck. I'm going to take Minnesota here to cover the spread. 12.5 points is really not a lot when you're playing an FCS school. Yes, they're a good FCS school, but the talent level between the two, there just really should be no comparison there. And I think Minnesota has their sights set on perhaps contending in that Big Ten Western Division this year. And I think they're going to cover the spread here and have a good showing against South Dakota State. Minnesota covers that spread there. Here's an interesting one. Kent State travels to Tempe to take on the Arizona State Sun Devils and Herm Edwards. Kent was a 2-10 team last year. If you look at their losses, 4 of those were close, and they are returning a lot of experience on both sides of the football, especially on the offense. They quarterback Woody Barrett, he's returning with his number 1 wide receiver. This team always plays a tough schedule, it seems like. Last year, you saw them taking on Penn State, Ole Miss, and Illinois out of conference. And this year, of course, you're taking on Arizona State, Wisconsin, and Auburn out of the MAC schedule. So that's a pretty tough ask for the Golden Flashes. Definitely not afraid of a big payday and some stiff competition. Arizona State, I think, may struggle initially replacing Manny Wilkins. did a really nice job for them last year at quarterback. Of course, the running back, Benjamin, is a factor there. I think the Kent State defense may have some trouble stopping him. The high in Tempe, Arizona on Thursday. This game actually kicks off at 9 p.m. I believe it's 9 p.m. Eastern time. So it'll be 6 p.m. their time. High is supposed to be 107 degrees. I mean, how you play football in that. I know it's a different kind of heat than what we have here in the South. I've never actually been to Arizona, so if you know anything about that and if you've ever experienced that Arizona heat, drop a comment in the comment section below and tell us how different that 107 degrees in Arizona would feel versus in South Carolina. South Carolina, I know it would be miserable. There would be no way you could get the game in and play effectively. I'm going to look for Kent State to cover the spread in this game. I think that Arizona State will win and in the end win comfortably. But I could still see an experienced team went out west and giving them a little bit of a problem with the transition there and quarterbacks and so forth. Give me the Golden Flashes. Last of the Thursday games on the docket here, you have the Holy War. Big game here. This is one of the bigger ones of the evening, too, one I'm interested to watch. Utah goes on the road, taking on BYU. Utah's 5-point favorites in Provo. Utah would be my pick to win the Pac-12 South, along with a lot of folks out there. BYU last year, number 18 in total defense in the country. I don't think a lot of people really realize how good this team is defensively. They're just, they just don't really have the skill players to put it all together. But this is a solid bunch. However, Utah, all their defense did was finish number 14 last year. So you can see where we're going with this one. Utah lost their quarterback, Tyler Huntley, and their quarterback, Zach Moss, the last few games of the season last year, and it cost them a little bit. Ended up losing the bowl game to Northwestern. They lost the Pac-12 championship game to Washington, and I think that was a direct result of all that. Had those two players been healthy, I think that this team you could have been talking about a New Year's Six bowl type team. I'm really high on Utah this year, especially with those two guys coming back. They're returning a very solid defensive line. Last year's game between these two guys was close. Actually, BYU led for most of that game, and Utah had to come from behind and pull out the victory. But once again, that I think was due to missing those two skilled guys at quarterback and running back. 5 points is not a lot here, and the line is kind of weird. That's one of those kind of strange lines that it seems like they want to suck you in here for some reason. You would think Utah would be a little bit higher of a favorite than 5 points, and I'm not exactly sure where this line has gone since then. But for me, I've seen enough from Utah to know that I'm very high on them this year, and I'm taking them in this game to win the Holy War once again over BYU and cover the spread there. Let's get into Friday's games now. And if you watched, I'm going to put a link in the description box below of I broke down 5 games approximately 2.5 weeks ago, I think it was. And 3 of those were games that will be played this Friday. Just talking about some lines and some interesting sharp picks there. So I won't break down those games again, but I'm going to link it in the description box below so you can go watch the whole breakdown if you'd like. But I'll just go on ahead and give you a spoiler there. I'm going to take Tulsa to barely cover the spread against Michigan State, who is a team that generally kind of starts slow and struggles with inferior teams. I'm going to take Wisconsin to cover the spread against South Florida. I just think South Florida has no chance of stopping that Jonathan Taylor attack and Wisconsin. And I'm also taking Army and their powerful running game to cover the spread against Rice. I think that's easy money in that game. So if you want to go check that video out, I'm going to link it in the description box below when I publish this video. All right, let's get into some UMass going on the road and taking on Rutgers. UMass has a new head coach this year. Walt Bell comes over. He was the offensive coordinator at Florida State last year. Don't know if that's really saying a lot, but it is what it is, and that was his position. They lost their quarterback and their wide receiver. I believe they lost their running back as well off of a bad team. Andy Ford, I believe, was the name of the quarterback there. I believe that was his name, and he did a pretty good job for them. They put up a lot of points. They just had no defense whatsoever, so they didn't win a lot of games. You really had a Rutgers team last year. It started off bad. They got blown out by Kansas, got blown out by Buffalo, but eventually down the stretch when I started playing in the Big Ten schedule, and they didn't really play that bad. They hung in there against Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan State, Illinois, Indiana. I mean, there were some games there that they actually could have pulled off. So I look for them to improve marginally this year. Maybe not a lot in the win-loss column. They were 1-11 last year, and looking at this year's schedule, it's hard to find wins there. It is really hard for them to find wins for them. This is a game I think they're going to win. They have a non-conference game at home against Liberty, which is winnable. And looking at the Big Ten schedule, if they're going to win some games, they're going to have to pull an upset somewhere. Maybe beating Indiana or Maryland, maybe Illinois. But the other games there, they don't look like they have a lot of chance of pulling out any victories. Arthur Satowski turns for his second year as their quarterback. He had some horrible numbers last year. The kid was 4 touchdowns and 18 interceptions. That's got to improve. I mean, there's only one way that he can go from here, and that's up. I mean, you cannot get worse than that. Hopefully he has a much better year this year. I think that Rutgers will play well in this game. They normally play pretty well in their openers and cover spreads. They've covered spread against Washington a couple times in openers in the past. They played pretty well last year in their opener against Texas State. I don't think that UMass is a very good team. And taking an offensive coordinator from a school like Florida State, which struggled to score, I don't know if that's the best move that they could have made as far as that position goes there. So I'm taking those Scarlet Knights in this one to cover that 15.5 points. I think they blow UMass out of the water Friday night in High Point Solution Stadium in Piscataway. I just like to say that. All right, Utah State, some Aggies going on the road, taking on Wake Forest. These two have developed a little bit of a rivalry over the years. I've played a few times. Another interesting intersectional matchup. Jordan Love returns to Utah State. An almost elite talent, really is. Back at starters, quarterback. Problem is, he doesn't have any other starters coming back with him on offense. It's basically him and maybe one offensive lineman. They have a new coach this year. Of course, their last coach, Matt Wells, is now the coach at Texas Tech. Their coach now is their former coach, Gary Anderson, who was, I believe, at Wisconsin for a bit. Not the best choice here to run this program, in my opinion, but it is what it is. They do return 7 starters on their defense. So that unit could be kind of salty, or as salty as a Mountain West defense could be. Wake Forest is returning quarterback Jamie Newman, also returning Sam Hartman, who played some at quarterback last year as well, and Kendall Hinton, who also saw some time at QB last year. I believe he was suspended for the opener, was thought of going to be the quarterback last year. But he's been switched over to wide receiver. Also returned to quarterback Matt Coburn. It's a team that they're always just hanging around that 6-7 win mark, it seems like, under Dave Clawson. He's done a nice job there at Wake Forest in being able to win the games that they should. Last year, they knocked off a ranked team on the road for the first time since like 2007 in NC State. And this is a team that beat a really, really talented Memphis team, really good offensive team in the Memphis Tigers in the Birmingham Bowl here. Utah State making this long trip on the road. Wake Forest, once again, not one of the elite teams in college football, not one of the better teams even in the ACC. But I still think that they win this game, and I like them to cover that 3.5 against an inexperienced Utah State offense. Purdue Boilermakers go on the road to take on the Nevada, what are they? The Wolfpack. I think this is a return of a game that was played in West Lafayette a couple of years ago. Nevada is a team that's lost a lot off of a high-powered offense from last year. They won their bowl game in overtime last year. It escapes me who they played, but they did win. Their defense is only returning 2 of their top 7 tacklers. So that could be a bit of a problem as well. Purdue's got a lot of inexperience on their offense, but they returned some really important pieces in that quarterback, Elijah Sindelar, who was the starter in 2017. Of course, last year started splitting time with David Blau, and then Sindelar got injured a few games into the season, and Blau took over, and he had a great season for them. They returned Rondell Moore, one of the more dynamic wide receiver talents in the country. They just don't have a lot to go with it, but I think that the type of game they play, this altitude, really kind of plays in their advantage a little bit. I like Purdue here to cover the spread against this team. You're talking Big 12 or Big 10 matching up against Mountain West, which you would think that the Big 10 team would have the decided physical advantage. I watched Purdue play last year in the Music City Bowl, and they are not a very physical team. Auburn pushed them around like they were the junior varsity. It was pathetic, but yet this Nevada, this is a different animal. They're really inexperienced. I think Purdue gets to win here. 10 points is not a lot, especially with talented Moore and Elijah Sindelar, who, if he's healthy, he could put up just as good numbers as Blau did last year. Give me Purdue and points in this game. Colorado State taking on Colorado, the Buffaloes in Denver. So this is actually a neutral site game. Colorado State last year, really bad, 3-9. Got some inexperiences on both sides of the ball. Of course, the Colorado Buffaloes started off 5-0 last year, and then became one of the only teams in history to finish 5-7 after starting 5-0. So they really, really struggled against their Pac-12 schedule. They returned Steven Montez and wide receiver Laviska Shenault, one of the better wide receivers in the country. The defense should be salty enough. Head coach Mel Tucker taking over this year, former defensive coordinator at Georgia. So they should be some improvements there on that side of the ball. They just failed to perform against their Pac-12 schedule last year. It's the bottom line. This is a rivalry game here. big stage for both these teams there, playing in the home of the Denver Broncos. This is one I'm not really confident in. First-year head coach, they finished the season on a really on a down note. 7 straight losses. That's rough. So I wouldn't even bet this one if I were actually laying that. I would maybe play the points on it or something. But my inkling here says that Colorado a little bit better with the experienced quarterback and a really good wide receiver. So I'm taking them to cover this 13 points against the Rams. Last game on the docket. And I'll sit this over here, and we got a lot more games on there, and you'll see a little preview of what we'll be picking in the next video. Oklahoma State on the road against Oregon State. Oregon State returned 7 starters on that offense and 9 on that defense. Returning 9 starters is pretty significant. Are they any good, though? They allowed 45 points per game last year. What the heck? That's bad. I mean, what have they done to fix it? I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of evidence of it that they have done a lot to fix that. I don't think that they could be any worse. But I don't see them making significant improvements on that side of the ball. Ohio State's got a trio of good wide receivers. They got a new quarterback taking over this year, and Drew Brown, who's a transfer from Hawaii. That offense should be potent enough. Maybe not one of your more potent Oklahoma State offensives, but potent enough. Of course, we know that they've had the every year it seems like they just reload at quarterback. You go from Mason Rudolph to Taylor Cornelius. You got Mike Gundy there. You got Mike Gundy as your head coach. You're going to have a good quarterback. You're going to have good quarterback play there, especially on the passing side of the ball. I don't think this is going to be Oklahoma State's best team, but I think they're going to be good enough to cover the spread and win pretty comfortably on the road at Oregon State. Another team that I don't expect a lot from. They may win one Pac-12 game this year if Colorado's on the schedule. And they may get it. If not, they may go 0-9 in conference again, unfortunately. No, actually, they did win a conference game last year. They beat Colorado. So I think they may go winless in the conference. I think they're going to be improved. I just don't think that they're to the level yet that they can pull off a win unless it's going to be an upset. They're kind of in the same boat as Rutgers a little bit. I'm taking Oklahoma State here to cover the spread against the Mighty Beavers on Friday night in the late game. And that's it, guys. Carolina Jackpot out of here. Make sure you check out in the description box below that video on those other 3 games that we're talking about. There's actually 5 games covered there. We also talk about Oklahoma versus Houston and Syracuse versus Liberty. Those are games that are Saturday and Sunday games. So the part 2, once again, that'll be coming up either tomorrow night or it'll be coming up at some point in time Thursday. All right, guys, I appreciate you watching this. Make sure you come back. If you're not subscribed and you like the video, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. That really helps me a lot. Share the videos wherever, Facebook, Twitter, whatever your favorite social media platform is. Smoke signals, I don't care. Whatever you want to do to get it out there. Want to spread the word, get some more subscribers, get some more people in here, more people interested. These videos were very popular last year and the year before that, and I expect that to be the case once again this year. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it, and I will see y'all later. Peace, and I'm out of here. Go Gamecocks. Woo!